Welcome in. We are live with Recruit Reaction. Steve Wiltfong, Josh Newberg. We're here. We're talking Nebraska. This game just wrapped up. I got Steve Wiltfong here. Steve, first impressions. You nailed this prediction. You had it right all along. You were going with the Cornhuskers. Did they win it the way you thought they were going to win it?
No, I thought that this game would be more high-powered offensively. But Nebraska's defense was fantastic from start to finish, 28-10. They get it done, 2-0. Nebraska hasn't had a winning season in 7 straight years, Josh. They look ripe to put that streak to an end. And we already have Recruit Reaction up on Husker Online. We're going to talk about some of it here at Recruit Reaction here. I've talked to Jackson Cantwell, the #1 offensive tackle in the land, said it was a very cool place to be around, crazy atmosphere, could see himself playing in a place like this, said that Nebraska was firing on all cylinders. We have a new on-3 RPM in favor of Nebraska we'll discuss later in the show. Michael Terry, 5-star athlete, and his family were back on campus. They loved it, but what a timely win for Nebraska to get to 2-0, and it looks like they're finally turning the corner after 7 straight losing seasons.
What a great win. The Colorado Buffaloes roll into Lincoln, Nebraska. They get lost somewhere in the cornfields, I guess, because it didn't go the way that Coach Prime, Shador, and the boys thought it was going to go. Travis Hunter still went off, still very productive game, but it was all Dylan Raiola in Nebraska. Do we have the Jackson Cantwell video, Nick? Can you roll that? This is Jackson.
Hey guys, Jackson Cantwell.
The boys, let's go. We got to get them in red. We got to get them in red.
We're checking in from Nebraska. We're playing Colorado tonight. Should be a great game. Go Big Red.
Biggest atmosphere in over a decade. Go Big Red in Colorado.
That right there is the #1 offensive tackle in the 2026 class, Jackson Cantwell, with Will Compton. Will Compton was sitting at this desk on Thursday with JD Piquel on the On3 channel doing a video about this game and how important it was. So what do you think it was like for some of these prospects before the game in Lincoln, Nebraska?
398 straight sellouts for Nebraska, and Will Compton just said it was the best atmosphere that they've had there in a decade. Nebraska's got brand new pristine facilities that can go toe-to-toe with any college football program in the country. Recruits spent some time inside those facilities before they walked through the tunnel, walked out onto the field into that amazing environment. They had the light show going into the fourth quarter. The commits, most of their commits were back on campus. You have TJ Lateef walking around before the game, according to our Sean Callahan from Husker Online, talking to Cortez Mills, the Oklahoma receiver commit that was on campus, talking to Michael Terry as they try and battle Texas for him. So TJ Lateef was wearing his recruiting hat tonight. The way that the fans treat the recruits, second to none as well. They know all the top prospects' names. It's first-class treatment for these prospects when they come on campus. Michael Terry talked about that when he visited for the spring game in April, when he landed in the airport, felt the love from the community right off the bat. But the atmosphere was off the charts. First play of the game, Ty Robinson bats down Shedeur Sanders' pass. Third play of the game, he sacks him. Before we know it, Dante Dowdell, the transfer running back from Oregon's in the end zone, and they're off and running.
All right, Steve, let's slow down for a minute. Let everybody get in here. I know the game literally just wrapped up. You guys hit like, hit subscribe. Make sure you hit like. We want to get people out here watching this live Recruit Reaction show, and it's going to be special. We're going to, of course, talk Colorado, Nebraska, big game visitor list, but we're also going to talk Georgia. We're going to talk Auburn. We're going to go to Michigan and find out what happened up in Ann Arbor. They had a big noon contest against Texas. There were some flip targets on campus as well. We're going to talk some USC. I said Auburn. We're going to talk them, but we also got a special guest. We got Hayes Fawcett. We're about to bring him on in a minute. But in the meantime, there were some changes to the top 20. Let's look at the current recruiting rankings. Of course, you got Ohio State still on top, but look at Texas. Texas moves up to number 5. There was a big deal. We're going to talk about it. Myron Charles flipped his commitment from FSU to Texas. Hayes Fawcett broke that news, but Texas, Steve, bumps Auburn. Auburn was probably the story of the week heading in to the weekend. I mean, they were pressing. They had Deuce Knight on campus. They were at number 5. They were talking about Auburn making a run at number 1. They moved back a spot this week.
Well, we projected that Texas would be the team of August going into the month of August. Auburn certainly gave them a run for their money, but Texas shooting up into the top 5 with a great August. That momentum is now continuing into September. They have a pair of defensive tackles committed right now in Myron Charles and Josiah Sharma, who they probably led for before Florida State was able to get Myron Charles in the fold. Oregon was able to kind of steal around in Josiah Sharma, but Texas stays in those recruitments, gets it back on track, gets them both in the fold. 2 SEC caliber body types on the interior for the Longhorns as they transition to this league. They certainly look like they could win the national championship today with their performance up there in Ann Arbor, dominating from start to finish. Quinn Ewers and company getting a big win after the game. Steve Sarkisian and his staff getting another big win on the trail. They're trying to line up Michael Terry. Nebraska trying to slow that momentum down, getting Terry on campus this weekend. But Myron Charles was a big flip. They've been working on it for a while. We've talked about it on Inside Scoop and Whip Around, and now it is official with Hayes Fawcett breaking the news earlier this afternoon.
Yeah, that was huge. So, all right, guys, make sure you guys are locked in. Hit subscribe to the On3 Recruits channel. We're going to be doing these live reactions every single week. And Steve, you got reaction pouring in. Let me bring in Hayes Fawcett right now. As we said, the big news of the day was Myron Charles flipping his commitment from FSU to Texas. Let's bring in the man who broke the news himself, Hayes Fawcett. Hayes, how long were you sitting on that nugget that Myron Charles was going to flip, or did he just let you know in the moment?
Yeah, Josh, I heard from Myron Charles earlier this week. He was actually planning on decommitting rather than flipping. And then about, I think it was Thursday, he informed me that he was just going to plan on flat out flipping from Florida State to Texas, which he did moments after the game today. And building off of what Steve said, man, it was a huge flip for Texas as they landed another big-time defensive lineman. He joins Josiah Sharma, who flipped from Oregon earlier in the cycle. When I spoke with Charles concerning his decision, he told me that Florida State and Texas were the 2 schools that were definitely recruiting him the hardest. And really what Texas has going on right now really stood out to him. And he believes in their vision for him, and he's glad to be a Longhorn.
Hayes, he leads a class that also includes Lance Jackson and Smith the Rogbo. This is one of the best defensive line classes in the country. Lance Jackson, one of the biggest freaks, 6'5.5", 270 pounds. Do you feel like Myron Charles is done, or do you think that Florida State and other programs will have a chance as this process continues?
Man, in my opinion, from speaking with Myron Charles, he does seem like he's pretty much locked in. I'm sure other programs are going to continue to recruit him. But again, in my opinion, I feel like he's locked in with the Longhorns.
Hayes, do you think this could be the last Longhorn flip of a Florida State Seminole? I mean, Javian Hilson, we heard about him a little bit throughout the summer in terms of Texas. Do you think that's something that could spark up down the road?
Man, not going to lie. I know Steve says this a lot, especially with like schools with like Miami and stuff. Texas is going to be a school that I would not want to recruit against, coming down all the way to signing day. They keep on winning like they're doing. Same thing with Miami. I wouldn't be surprised to see Texas flipping a few more recruits down the line.
All right. Speaking of flips, Hayes had another.
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Steve. Go ahead.
I was just going to say Texas, the way they closed Jonah Williams, getting him on campus at the end of July, no one was talking about them. Yeah. Auburn, Miami, and Oregon, those are just 4 programs that I think can just change your recruitment on a dime.
Yeah, it's been pretty incredible to see what those programs have done towards the end of this summer, and they're not done yet. There was another big flip today, Rashad Johnson. I didn't see this one coming. Rashad Johnson flips from Georgia to A&M before all the action got going. Hayes, you spoke to Rashad Johnson earlier today.
Yeah, I did. This is another one that's kind of been in the works behind the scenes. I heard from him actually last weekend that this was in the works and told me to hold off. And, about 2 days ago. Same with Myron Trolls. He hit me up and said, "Hey man, I'm looking to, flip from Georgia to Texas A&M Saturday before the game." We spoke, and he had nothing but good things to say about both programs. He said Coach Mike Elko and Coach Ish did a great job recruiting him, and they have a great plan for him coming in. He said what really stood out to him was even though when he was committed to Georgia, he felt that relationship stayed the same, and they continued to treat him the same and continue to recruit him hard. He joins a really loaded Texas A&M secondary class with Adonis Curry, Kobe Sellers, and Dijon Petaway. Really liking the way that secondary is shaping up for the Aggies in the 2025 class.
Yeah, Jamar Beal-Goins is another really good player in that A&M secondary. They have the number 9 class in the country per the On3 industry, and his nickname is Tom Tom. He visited Texas A&M for the season opener against the Irish. And even with that, I talked to some people around College Station this morning that said that he kind of checked in and said he was going to make a final decision today, but they were still kind of on pins and needles there. But Coach Ish and Coach T-Rob from Georgia kind of battling down the stretch here. Coach T-Rob trying to keep him in the fold. Coach Ish and company trying to flip him. They got that spatula out and added a top target to their class, beating Georgia on the trail, hoping to ultimately beat the Bulldogs on the field down the road.
All right, Hayes, we'll bring you back in a minute, but thanks for dropping in with some of the major developments from today. Appreciate you.
Appreciate it, Josh.
All right, we'll bring Hayes back in here in a minute. But, Steve, we got to talk about this Nebraska-Colorado game. What an incredible finish. Well, from start to finish, I should say, Nebraska dominated this one. 28-10 is your final. Colorado comes in with all the hype, but Nebraska, they were putting together a better season. I don't want to say great just yet, but they're off to a great start. And they also had some really big names on campus this weekend. We'll start with 5-star athlete Michael Terry. He's coming in. Now, everything's trending towards Texas, but Nebraska, this was important for a couple reasons. I mean, Nebraska needed to kind of stop what was happening. All these picks are going in for Texas. Do you think this game had a major impact on Michael Terry's recruitment?
Well, I know that he's never been in a better atmosphere than he was in tonight, and talking to his dad about it, he just said it's different at Nebraska. And Nebraska's always done a great job. Coming into the visit this week, his dad said that no program is recruiting his son harder than Nebraska right now. Now, I still think that Texas came into this visit as the clear team to beat. He was wearing Texas gear during his game on Friday night, but Nebraska receivers coach Garrett McGuire has been leading the charge in recruiting him. They think that Matt Rule is an overachiever, the way that he's built up programs. They think he has the resources to make Nebraska special. They've been there 3 times this calendar year, wanted to come back and get to this game. They're looking forward to getting to Texas for the Georgia game later down the road. I'm not quite sure if they've been able to surpass Texas just yet, but certainly they're having a fabulous time in Lincoln tonight. And Michael Terry's in the locker room celebrating with the players right now.
Are we going to have a chance to get Michael Terry on for some immediate reaction, like literally from the locker room?
Well, that's the plan. They have the link, but again, parents were hanging. Michael Terry was sitting in the front row all night tonight, so he wasn't even sitting with his folks. He was with the other recruits, soaking in the atmosphere, getting to know those guys, building that bond and chemistry with those guys like quarterback TJ Lateef, who was hanging out with him, and Cortez Bills. Those guys were hanging together pregame per Sean Callahan of Husker Online. But now he's in the locker room with the players and the other recruits, so we'll see how long that celebratory deal goes before hopefully he joins our
we might have a Michael Terry interview coming for you guys. But I want to talk about Cortez Mills, because all week, Steve, we had Oklahoma fans in the comments section on our On3 Recruits YouTube channel saying that Cortez Mills was not going to make it to Lincoln. We're wrong. We better go check our sources. But tell me, did Cortez Mills make it to Lincoln?
Well, yeah, Sean Callahan said he was there hanging out with TJ Lateef and Michael Terry, and he came there with his mom. I think that, our source was Cortez Mills. So he said he was going to be there. But sometimes visits don't come to fruition, right? Like Travis Smith Jr. was going to visit Auburn this weekend, but at the last minute, the Tennessee commit decided I'm not going to go. There's a lot of hoopla around me going to this Auburn game, so I'm not going to go. But Cortez Mills did make the trip out to Nebraska. He took his official visit for the spring game back in April. He committed to Oklahoma this summer. Coach McGuire, Coach Rule and company have not slowed down on the gas with Cortez Mills. They got him out. We'll see what that means moving forward.
All right. How about edge Dawson Merritt? I know he was one that we were keeping an eye on, committed to Alabama. Did he end up officially making it in?
I didn't talk to Sean Callahan about that, but I never thought that visit was in doubt, him and his mom coming to campus. And he did make it. He did make it to Nebraska tonight, so he was on campus and looks like he was having a fabulous time in Lincoln. And look, they got to play well to have a chance to flip Dawson Merritt. Alabama, the excellence, this new coaching staff that they have there, and their track record of excellence and success is what attracted Dawson Merritt to Alabama. But Nebraska has gave him a lot to think about. I mean, Alabama led for a while, but Nebraska was always right there, giving him a little bit of hesitance. He even kind of pushed back that commitment at one point to take another round of visits to each of these schools. His dad, who coaches with the Kansas City Chiefs, used to coach with Coach Rule, so they have that connection, that trust. But even though Matt Rule has rebuilt Temple and rebuilt Baylor, they got to prove that he could do it again. You're only as good as your last job, but now they're 2-0. You just saw that defense swarm and slow down an exciting, high-powered Colorado offense all night. But they got to keep it rolling. We're only 2 games into the season. But I think that if Nebraska has a great season, they're going to be in the thick of it for Dawson Merritt as he continues through his process.
Yeah. All right. How about Jackson Cantwell? We saw the video at the intro of the show. Jackson Cantwell, the number 1 offensive tackle in the 2026 class. Now, he was at, I believe, was it Texas A&M last week? I mean, he's going to be one of the most sought-after tackles in next year's class.
I believe this was his first game visit of the year. He's going to get back to Alabama, LSU, and Georgia before the season's out. You got programs like Missouri, Oregon, USC that he's high on. But he said it was crazy of the atmosphere. It's very cool to be around. It seems like it'll be lots of fun to play in. He goes, these guys were firing on all cylinders. And I asked him what was standing out about Nebraska at this stage in his process. And he said his relationship with the coaches, proximity. When you talk about those other schools, the Nixa, Missouri product, you got Mizzou obviously close to home and Nebraska close to home. But everybody, all those other programs, Alabama, LSU, Georgia, maybe I would give Georgia the inch coming into the fall visits, Oregon, USC. Nebraska is definitely in a good proximity place. He talked about the culture and the history of the program. And again, like all these other recruits, he sees them getting back on track in a hurry.
Yeah. Jackson Cantwell was at Ole Miss week 1. Sorry, I said Texas A&M. He was at Ole Miss for that game. Dayton Raiola, he was in the stands watching this one. He's a 2026 quarterback. Had to be a pretty cool moment to see what his brother did against Colorado.
Absolutely. And I think that he's Nebraska's to lose. Will they take a couple quarterbacks in this class? I could see them doing that. Another young man that I think they're in fantastic shape for is Michael Clayton. He's a 2026 quarterback from the Sunshine State. He told me that Nebraska is his leader right now. So with that, I've logged an on 3 RPM in favor of the Huskers tonight after talking to Michael Clayton. Now, Nebraska is also trying to battle for Helaman Kasaga, who's an on 300 quarterback from Utah who's lighting it up as a junior. But Michael Clayton received an offer in the summer. Nebraska's been doing a good job, came out here, had a great visit, said it's the best environment he's been in. He talked about the student section going wild nonstop. He talked about how knowledgeable the fans were, even getting quiet when Dylan Raiola and that offense was on the field, but they were certainly raucous at other times. But he likes the offensive play calling, the physicality that they played with. And similar to Jackson Cantwell, he said that the game day environment would be amazing to play in front of. So Nebraska, they're the leader right now for Michael Clayton, and my on 3 RPM reflects that.
Nebraska fans, talk to us. How you feeling about the big weekend recruiting wise? I mean, what does a win in week 2 against Colorado mean? It doesn't mean everything, but what does it mean let us know. Comment section below. Steve, a little bit more here on Nebraska. People are going to want to know. I'm sure in the chat they're saying it right now. Nebraska fans, this Michael Clayton pick that you put in, is it something that you think could come to fruition by the end of the weekend, or is it a projection that's where you just think he'll end up at Nebraska?
I asked him if he could pull the trigger soon. We're still waiting there. He's probably in that locker room celebrating this win as well with Nebraska. Also, we're getting reaction right now from Hudson Parliament, who is a offensive lineman from Brandon, South Dakota. And Nebraska, they're treating the Dakotas like it's the home state. They are cooking in the Dakotas right now. And Hudson Parliament is an offensive lineman that's absolutely near the top of their board in this junior class. And he said Memorial was rocking tonight. I liked watching the physical play of the offensive line that set the tone early, how dominant they were at the point of attack. Smash mouth football fits my style of play. So that left a big impression on me tonight, said Hudson Parliament from South Dakota.
All right. Nebraska fans, let us know how we feeling after this big win. Comment section below. All right, Steve, let's talk some Miami Hurricane recruiting. There was a couple of major flip targets in Coral Gables for this one against FAMU. On3's number 1 ranked corner, DJ Pickett, after being in the swamp in week 1, he's in Coral Gables watching Miami in week 2. Also, number 4 ranked linebacker, TJ Alford. He's committed to Ohio State. So like DJ Pickett, they're both flip targets. Steve, how are we feeling about these Miami Hurricanes? I feel like we've been talking about them all week. And the bit of news that we had was DJ Pickett. Yeah, he was going to make a return trip to Miami, but it was supposed to be for the FSU game in about 6 weeks. But DJ Pickett shows up today. What does it mean?
Well, we hinted on Whip Around, which hit like and subscribe to the On3 Recruits channel, so you know when the next episode of Wiltfong Whip Around is coming out, that we thought he would take more visits and one could come sooner before the Florida State game. That's because we knew that DJ Pickett was going to be back in Coral Gables with his mom this weekend to check things out. His cousin Cannon Pickett, 2026 offensive lineman, as well. His other cousin, freshman Booker Pickett Jr., is a true freshman at Miami. This one, Dennis Smith is Miami's general manager, Josh, and he tweeted this morning or last night that recruiting is always a marathon. Miami knows that as much as any program. I don't think anything is imminent with DJ Pickett right now, but I will say that Miami is running the race. I think they're moving their way up in the pack here. LSU's out in front. He's going to visit the Tigers 3 times this fall, but Miami's going to keep running. Mario Cristobal is leading the charge on the trail. They're playing at a high level. The Pickett family is full of Miami fans. He loves LSU. He's got a great relationship with Corey Raymond. But Miami's running the race. They're playing well. Sounded like he had another awesome experience at Miami. He's going to come back with his dad for the Florida State game later in the season. Maybe there's some other games in the works. He's going to be at LSU 3 times. Now, I don't have another Miami visit on my radar for Pickett. I knew he was going to be there this weekend when I was hinting at another potential visit. I don't have a 3rd visit scheduled for him, but I just know that Miami is pushing. Eventually, coaches are going to make in-home visits. I think Mario Cristobal will break bread with the Picketts down the road on an in-home. They're in this marathon, and LSU is the leader, and Miami's got to go up the hill, but they're trying to climb, and we'll see what happens if they keep playing well. They're going to be favored in every one of these games that they play the rest of the season going into the college football playoff. And so they keep playing well. It'll be interesting to see how things shake out.
Yeah, it absolutely will. Now, one tradition, let's just call it a tradition, that Mario Cristobal has started at Miami is flipping a recruit from Ohio State late in the cycle. We've seen a couple with Justin Scott. We saw Mark Fletcher. We've seen a couple. And now TJ Alford, he shows up. He's an Ohio State linebacker commitment. He's from the state of Florida. Hasn't said a whole lot about his commitment status, but this weekend he shows up at Miami. What do you make of it?
Well, my eyebrows are raised. I mean, they flipped Jordan Lyle, running back from Ohio State last cycle. There's a lot of buzz around Coral Gables that Jordan Lyle is the next special running back. They beat Ohio State for Marquise Lightfoot, a 5-star edge rusher in last year's class who was silently committed to Ohio State at one point. And I talked to TJ Alford as he was walking into Coral Gables today. And he said Miami's definitely on the come up, called them the home state team. Miami's in the market for another running back, and they got their eye on Tarvos TJ Alford.
All right. Now, also, linebacker Kellen Wiley was there. He's from Armwood High School. He's been one that Miami's been turning the heat up on a little bit. Do you think Kellen Wiley is a guy that they could close on soon? What are you hearing?
I don't know soon, but I think that I think that they're certainly the front runner for him. And this Miami class is going to finish third straight top 10, most likely, potentially top 5. And you have your blue chippers that they're chasing, the Hilton Stubbs of the world, who was on campus today. He told me that he thought all these uncommitted guys and committed guys elsewhere had a great time. So you got your national recruits, you got your local national recruits, guys like Chris Ewald and Bryce Fitzgerald. But then they got the guys that are from in-state that are their evaluations that they love. Guys like Micah Newton and Dante Simpson are in-state defensive linemen that they flipped earlier in August from other programs, NC State. That's how they view this young man. I mean, he is a guy that they love for his size and length and the way he continues to develop. And these are guys that'll be passionate about playing for the U. That's another thing that they covet with these young men here, and he certainly fits that bill.
All right, Steve, what about more of a national target? You know, if Miami continues to keep rolling the way they are, what about a guy like a 5-star defensive lineman, Elijah Griffin?
Well, we talked about a season. If Miami can have a 11 or 12 win season, what could that do for them on the trail? Why would they be so much fun to follow? Elijah Griffin's a name that we were one of the first to mention. Now, we like Georgia there. Georgia's the on 3 RPM favorite, but Chad Simmons was at Elijah Griffin's game over the weekend and reports that Elijah Griffin could be back at Miami this coming weekend. And if I'm Georgia, makes me a little nervous because Miami is a program that can certainly close. Now, he's going to take his official visit to Georgia for the Mississippi State game in October. That's around his birthday weekend. I'd been hearing that visit was in the works for a while. I wouldn't be surprised if that's a commitment type official visit on the books, but Miami getting them back again next weekend, we'll see if that can shake some things up for Elijah Griffin. He's got some family in the area, I believe, and they always have a fabulous time down there.
Yeah, he's one just to keep an eye on as this thing keeps rolling. Miami fans, talk to me and Steve. Let us know how we feeling about these flip picks. How do you feel about DJ Pickett? If it were up to you and you had a prediction on the RPM, would you put a flip pick in for DJ Pickett?
Let's not close this Miami segment because we didn't even get a chance to talk about Dallas Wilson and Joshua Moore. Dallas Wilson rocking Miami gloves all over social media Friday night at his game, Oregon commit. I thought there was a chance that maybe he visited this weekend. Obviously, that did not happen, but I wouldn't be surprised if he popped up at Miami at some point. There was some talk he was going to visit Florida last weekend as well. Did not make that visit, but those in-state programs are going to keep pushing pedal to the metal. And then Joshua Moore, DJ Lagway going out there and having a freshman record performance for the Gators tonight was big. His dad, when I talked to his dad earlier this week, they went to the Florida-Miami game on Saturday. Then he visited Miami on Monday. But he said his son was still locked in with Florida because they have the quarterback, they have the great academics, and they love Billy Napier. But I still get the sense, talking to a lot of people with knowledge of that recruitment, that Miami's weighing that one as well. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with Joshua Moore as these seasons play out. But DJ Lagway going out there and showing that he truly is the quarterback of the future on the field was awesome for Florida. But Miami going to keep battling, certainly saying, hey, we're in the present. We're competing for championships right now. They're 2-0. They got to keep it rolling. But there's that kind of buzz around the Hurricanes right now.
Yeah, kind of crazy. We'll see what happens there. Steve, when it comes to Miami, do you get a feeling that they are really gearing up for this FSU game? I mean, already hearing DJ Pickett, but the way that they capitalized on beating UF, I mean, are they really gunning to get a huge group in there for that FSU game at home?
If they had 0 wins, it would be a huge group coming in. I mean, these games, no matter the year, you covered Florida State for a long time. You've been in that state forever. Even when those teams stink, the recruit sections for those games are always rocking.
Yeah,
And
but Mario knows that he might be able to drop the hammer on both of his rivals in 1 year, and that goes a long way when you do it in front of recruits.
I think that the sense I get talking to people around Miami is that they felt like they had a good football team coming into the season. And they're like, when we do what we're supposed to do, we're going to come back around on some of these recruitments that we lost. They're still swinging at Vernell Brown III too, for what it's worth. Florida legacy. But now that they have come out and smashed Florida and then got a good win tonight, I think the sentiment is, let's not take anything for granted now. Yeah. The coach speak is real, like week to week, like there cannot be any letdowns. We are in such a spot right now where we could have so much momentum. We don't need anything slowing that down. On the flip side, that Florida State game, Florida State coming into Coral Gables, that's going to be a game where Florida State looks at it and says, we can flip this season around. We can turn our season around with this game. All our goals that we had in the preseason are still attainable. And it starts right now with going into Miami and getting a big win. So, look, Florida, they lose the opener to Miami, but that was a Florida team that was coming in with a lot of excitement around their season. We'll see if Miami took their soul. We'll see. They bounce back and beat Stanford. Florida State's going to come into that game like it's a season opener again, a reboot, a restart. So it's going to be a tough game for them. But if they win it and go 2-0 against Florida and Florida State this year, Miami, they're a program that's on the track to the college football playoff. We're only 2 weeks into the season, but again, I think we agree that they would be the favorite against every team they play. Do you
now? Sure looks that way.
Sure. So, but they got to keep it rolling.
Yeah, they do. So Miami fans, talk to us. If this thing keeps rolling, where are the Canes going to finish? Let us know. Comment section below. All right, let's go to Ann Arbor. We're going to talk some Michigan recruiting. Now, this weekend, the Wolverines lost a football game for the first time in a long, long time on a Saturday. Texas marched into town 31-12. The loss snaps a 29-game regular season winning streak, and it's the first home loss with fans in the stands since 2019. So, needless to say, Michigan brought in some really good recruits. It's a noon kickoff, so it's kind of hard logistically for a lot of recruits who play on Friday night to get to Ann Arbor, but there was a couple flip targets on campus. Cornerback Brandon Finney, who's committed to Oregon, and safety Elijah Dotson committed to Pitt. I think, Steve, maybe the biggest surprise of the weekend in Ann Arbor was cornerback Brandon Finney showing up, top 100 corner.
Yeah, that one was not on my radar. Certainly, Michigan's track record of developing players on the defensive side of the ball as they won 3 Big Ten championships and won the national championship is going to stand out to Brandon Finney and company. And Wink Martindale's kind of the OG defensive coordinator that resembles, Mike McDonald and Jesse Minner, but they didn't get that kind of Michigan defensive performance today against Texas. And they had a lot of players that came back from that national championship team on the field against a Longhorns team that made the college football playoff. So it was a subpar performance for Michigan. We'll see how they bounce back. They got USC inside the Big House in 2 weeks. So that'll be an opportunity to kind of get this taste out of their mouth from the Texas game. And again, everything that they came into the season looking to achieve is still in front of them if they can go out there and play in the Big Ten the way they want to. But obviously it was a tough game today. And with that, the recruit experience isn't what it could have been if they would have played better.
Yeah. I'm sure it was electric before the game, but once the game started, you kind of lose some of that luster. So what is it like for a recruit at a big game when it's Michigan, Texas? I mean, we could see 2 teams playing again in the playoffs later down the road. Can Michigan still capitalize on a game day atmosphere like this, what we saw today at noon?
Yeah, to your point, I think kids are able to see that the Big House, there's not many stadiums like that facility in college football. It's unbelievable. And the pageantry around the program is special, and the fan base is off the charts. And Michigan lost a football game today, but it doesn't take away the fact of just how successful that they've been in the 3 seasons prior coming in to this campaign. So they get a chance to bounce back. as the season continues, they'll continue to recruit these kids. They had a lot of young kids on campus that are certainly going to come back for more games and continue to build their reports with their coaching staffs. And Sharon Moore's just getting in there now as the official head coach after doing a fantastic job as the interim coach last year, leading them to big wins at Penn State and beating Ohio State, among others. And so it was just a tough day at the office today for Michigan, and we'll see how they respond, particularly against USC in 2 weeks.
All right. There was one really important 2026 recruit I want you to talk about. That's running back Javian Osborne, On3's #1 running back in the 2026 cycle. How's Michigan looking there?
Well, coming into the visit, they were at or near the top of the list for Javian Osborne, who also super high on Texas. That's another program that he's high on as well. So he'll continue through his process, but him and Tony Alford have a great rapport. His dad trusts Tony Alford, said that Tony Alford reminds him of himself, the way that he coaches, his style, and so there's a lot of comfort with that. They wanted to come up and see the game atmosphere, kind of compare it to Texas A&M the weekend before, because they were in College Station for the Aggies' loss to Notre Dame. So the Osbornes are 0-2 this year for the home team on their visits thus far. But there's more to recruiting than just coming out there and seeing team win a game. Very rarely is a team undefeated every year, So
Michigan was last year, but
no,
I get
exactly,
your point.
exactly
I get
right.
your point.
But most teams aren't, right?
No, most teams are not. That is the fact. Michigan fans, though, talk to us. Comment section below. Even though it was a loss to Texas, what do you think the Wolverines accomplished on the recruiting trail? Big visit weekend. Let us know. Comment section below. All right, we're going to talk Georgia. Let's head to Athens, talk a little Georgia recruiting. It was the Bulldogs' home opener, and it went like everybody thought it would. They picked up an easy 48-3 win over Tennessee Tech. They moved to 2-0 on the season, and there were some big-name visitors on campus. Running back Usman Kroma was supposed to maybe visit Atlanta last weekend. He shows up at Auburn, but this weekend he's in Athens. I know everybody put their picks in for Usman Kroma to Auburn, but what are you hearing after this Georgia visit?
Well, it'll be interesting to see what Georgia does at the running back position. They already have Bo Walker committed.
Right.
And Shane Marshall is another in-state tailback that they're in a great spot for. He's currently committed to Minnesota. He's going to take his official visit to Georgia for the Auburn game. And I get the sense that the Bulldogs are super high on Shane Marshall. Now, Kroma is someone that it seems like Georgia has always been keeping warm. And on the flip side, he's always been keeping warm as well. If Georgia turns it up for Kroma, do they ultimately get him? I think I've said to you in the past, I feel like they would have a great shot. But right now I get the sense that Auburn is the leader. There's been times where I felt that way about Florida State. And then Tennessee is another program looking to sign another or land another running back here in 2025. So they're in play as well. But Georgia getting Kroma on campus this weekend continues to show at the very least that these two parties are keeping each other warm.
Yeah, really interesting. It's kind of crazy how Kroma has two really good teams in Florida State and Auburn doing everything they can, pouring all of it into his recruitment. And he doesn't really want to, he hasn't committed. I shouldn't say he doesn't really want to go there, but he hasn't committed there yet. And then you got Georgia, who's kind of, for lack of a better term, slow playing him a little bit. And that's the team that he's really, trying to get a feel for. So we'll see what happens there with Kroma. You still like your pick for Auburn as it stands right now?
I haven't heard different, but all these picks are fluid. Even like I didn't get my picks in time for Myron Charles, who flipped to Texas, and Tom, who flipped to Texas A&M today. I mean, those were guys that we've talked about saying we're on flip watch. But these recruitments are all fluid. Kroma, we'll see what happens as he continues through his process here. But I'm still with Auburn until someone tells me different.
All right. There was another flip target. There was a couple flip targets on campus. You had Christian Gass. You had Jeremiah McLeod, who's committed to UF. Christian Gass, though, he's the linebacker committed to Tennessee, and this really came down to two teams. He committed to Tennessee about 6 weeks ago, and it was Tennessee or Georgia. So is it significant that he showed up today at Athens, or does it not mean much?
I think it is significant because that one, as you said, went down to the wire. I think there were times leading up to his commitment where should I leave the state? Now Tennessee coach Inge and company obviously did a good job getting them in the fold, but Georgia was right there, giving them a lot to think about. They're still doing that. Coach Schumann, Coach Kirby Smart, Coach Chidera, Deribe, they're all involved in recruiting Christian Gass. And they got him to campus this weekend. We'll see what happens coming out of it. But talking to some folks that spent time around him today, I think that they feel like there's some promise in that recruitment for Georgia moving forward. Jeremiah McLeod is someone that I think could also end up in Georgia's class. Now, Georgia, they're in the mix for several defensive linemen. That's a position that's always a point of emphasis for Kirby Smart year in and year out on the trail for them to play the style of football that they're looking to play. They got to be dominant in the trenches on both sides. And they got 4 targets out there on the defensive line right now, kind of on the interior part of the defensive line, in Justice Terry, who was at Alabama today, Elijah Griffin, who may be at Miami next weekend. Georgia's the on-3 RPM favorite for both. But they got Alabama and they got Miami challenging them for each of those prospects. And then you got Kevin Wynn, who's currently committed to Florida State. I think he's ultimately going to end up in Georgia's class. Now, it means I probably should RPM it soon. So let me circle around with Rusty and Chad and work together on those guys. Work together with those guys on it. But I like the way it's trending for Georgia with Kevin Wynn right now. And then you have Jeremiah McLeod, who was on campus today. I could see him ending up in Georgia's class as well. And that would be a hell of a defensive line finish. That could also include edge rusher Chase Linton, who was back there this weekend from Atlanta, was at the win over Clemson. Georgia's the favorite on the on-3 RPM for Chase Linton as well.
And the reason you're saying that could be a heck of a class is because we're also talking about Elijah Griffin and Justice Terry, another pair of 5-stars that are also trending heavily to Georgia. So, yeah, that would be quite a class. Want to talk about linebacker Tyler Atkinson because Georgia has already landed the number 1 linebacker in the 2025 class in Zane Walker. And today, 2026 linebacker Tyler Atkinson was on campus. What are you hearing about Atkinson in Georgia after this visit?
Well, I think that coming into the visit, Georgia was one of the 2 or 3 front runners. Ohio State is a program that's done a really good job with Tyler Atkinson. Auburn is one that's in there. But Xavier Griffin, who's committed to USC, and Tyler Atkinson, those are guys that, Georgia's pushing for. Xavier's out at USC this weekend, so that's big for the Trojans to get him back on campus as Georgia continues to recruit him and tries to get him to stay home. But those are guys that Georgia's definitely way in for. But those recruitments, obviously Xavier's already given a verbal, and Tyler's going to take some visits this fall and see some games.
All right, let's head out to California. Let's talk a little USC versus Utah. USC bringing in 2 official visitors this weekend. I don't know, this early in the year we don't see a ton of official visitors, but they're bringing in 2 good ones. Linebacker Ty Jackson, he's on 3's number 1 linebacker. He's not the industry number 1, but he's on 3's number 1. And also wide receiver Jerome Miles. He's number 8 ranked wide receiver in the country. He's uncommitted. And he's out at USC. 2 big official visits this weekend, Steve.
Yeah, absolutely. Ty Jackson, they're just shooting their shot, right? He's been to Florida like 8 to 10 times. His mom went to Florida State. He's been there a bunch. The Seminoles are getting the last official visit over Thanksgiving weekend when they play Florida. He's going to get back to Alabama for the Georgia game and then Penn State for the whiteout. So those are 4 programs that have more footing than USC coming into the weekend. But led by Coach Henderson, the Trojans have gotten involved. They wanted to go out and see it for themselves. It's a place that can, really wow somebody with all the resources and history around that program. So we'll see what they think of the Coliseum and everything coming out of it. Jerome Miles, Utah is the on-3 RPM favorite. Texas A&M, he was there last weekend with the Aggies. He took an official visit to Texas A&M in the summer. Texas A&M's trending for his quarterback. His quarterback last year's at Utah. His quarterback this year could end up at A&M. So those are 2 programs way in it. And then Ohio State and Georgia round out the top 5. But I could see USC really making a move with Jerome Miles because of Lincoln Riley's offense. Who Lincoln Riley and Dennis Simmons have produced at the wide receiver position will be exciting. So it'll be interesting to see what Jerome Miles has to say about USC coming out of this experience because I think that they have a lot to sell in that recruitment.
All right, now linebacker Madden Faramo, he's going to be there. But who I really want to talk about is 2026 quarterback, the number 3 ranked quarterback in America for the 2026 class, and that's Ryder Lyons. and he's been trending heavily to USC on the recruiting prediction machine. Is this one that the Trojans want to close out?
Yeah, absolutely. They have a great shot at Madden Faramo too. Chad Simmons kind of leading the charge in that news. They wanted to get him to the win over LSU last week, and that didn't happen. Now getting him on campus this weekend is huge, and they're starting to trend as they recruit against Texas, Notre Dame, and Washington. And then Ryder Lyons, I joined Chad Simmons with the On3 RPM after talking to Ryder and his mom following the win over LSU. He was in Las Vegas for that. Now he's on campus this weekend. Called Lincoln Riley a genius, just what he's done with Miller Moss and that offense, getting him ready to play this year. Seeing that in the opener was exciting for him, and I don't think a decision's too far off for Ryder Lyons, and love the way it's trending for USC as he gets back on campus this weekend.
That would be a huge way to kind of start the 2026 cycle, the same way that they did with Julian. Remember, Julian Lewis was the only commit in the 2025 cycle for some time. But having a guy like a Ryder Lyons would really kind of jumpstart things when it comes to recruiting. Anytime Lincoln Riley can get that quarterback in place, he can always recruit around that, it seems.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of where he starts his class. And really the way Lincoln Riley recruits quarterbacks, he recruits them one at a time. And Ryder Lyons is the guy that he's locked in on and has the committable offer. Now we'll see if he's a 26 or a 27, if he does a mission. What he chooses to do with that, we'll see. But what we do know is that USC loves him. He's arguably the best dual threat quarterback in the country, regardless of class, and that the Trojans lead.
All right, USC fans, let us know, how are we feeling right now about Lincoln Riley recruiting it with the Trojans? Let us know. Comment section below. All right, let's go out to Auburn. Auburn Tigers, they were all the rage after week one. Their recruiting was through the roof. They couldn't miss. And a little hiccup this week. Auburn loses to Cal at home 21-14. There's some big-time recruits on campus. Steve, do you think that the loss put a damper on Auburn's weekend?
I don't. I talked to someone on campus after the ball game that said that recruits that were there got a chance to see how much they were needed. They turned the ball over.
Yeah. Hey, you can sell it.
They turned the ball over 4 times today. I think that this is Hugh Freeze is at Auburn because the previous coaching staff wasn't getting it done. It's not like he inherited a double-digit win program. He's made Auburn very competitive very quickly since he's there with the roster that he inherited. They've done a good job on the recruiting trail. There's a lot of young talent on that football team. Top 10 recruiting class last year, but it's going to take some time, but they're doing it the old school way of grassroots recruiting. They'll hit some guys from the portal, but there's a lot of emphasis on this recruiting class coming in and helping with the trajectory of the program. And I think the guys on campus like Deuce Knight really saw, and I think Deuce Knight saw an opportunity for him to get on the field as a true freshman and be very competitive, with Peyton Thorne throwing 4 interceptions today. And they really not having another guy that they could turn to that they feel that confident in right now.
Yeah, I mean, I guess when you're recruiting Deuce Knight and you're trying to flip him from Notre Dame, it doesn't hurt when it doesn't hurt in recruiting when your quarterback throws 4 picks. I know that's hard to say because it definitely hurts. A win would have been better for Auburn recruiting than a loss, but recruiters are great at selling, and I guess that's how you sell it. Steve, do you still predict a Deuce Knight flip? I know it might not be this weekend, it might not be tonight, it might not be tomorrow, but are you still in that range that, yeah, I feel Deuce Knight's going to flip?
I felt like talking to several people that we were finally getting close to it actually happening. I still think it's going to happen. So yeah, I'm still there, but we'll see.
Okay. I know.
Again, conversations remain status quo with Notre Dame. And look, there were a lot of dates that were saying that he was going to commit to Auburn on this date, and this date. And the more recent one, I was kind of feeling a little bit based on the conversations I was having. But he always told Notre Dame he wasn't going to be in a rush to make a decision. He was going to go into the fall. And that's exactly what's happened. So Ole Miss hanging around in that recruitment as well. But all the intel, or most of the intel, I think everyone thinks he's going to go to Auburn. It's just a matter of, is the door open for someone to change that narrative? I still like where Auburn stands, and they're still in the conversation for the nation's number one recruiting class.
All right. Speaking of Ole Miss, running back commitment, Shakai Mills-Knight, who's committed to Ole Miss, visited Auburn this weekend. With Usman Kroma visiting Georgia, we know Usman Kroma is a top target for Auburn, but where does Shakai Mills-Knight fit in?
Well, Shakai told me he loves the culture at Auburn, and the week he committed to Ole Miss, Auburn did give him a lot to think about. He told me today that he loves the culture, but he was there with some of his teammates to help put them on, and he's still locked in with Ole Miss.
All right, so we'll see there. Now, Sam Turner, Georgia Tech wide receiver commit. Sam Turner's kind of a hot name. He's being recruited by not only Auburn, but also Georgia. Georgia's trying to flip him as well from Georgia Tech, and he had some quotes at Auburn Live. He said, "I'm at a loss for words right now. It was hard seeing that the quarterback at least pull him out. It's early in the season. Mistakes happen. They can shake it off." When asked if it plays a factor in his recruiting, Turner was honest. He said, "It does play a factor because the quarterback has to get me the ball, but he's a senior. So if Deuce Knight comes, that'd make a difference." So
there's a lot of positive momentum around Sam Turner in Auburn right now. So
even though, coming out of that one, but he's buddy. Look, whatever's happening on the field right now, Sam Turner's not going to be a part of that.
Exactly right. Look, and they're recruiting guys like Sam Turner to change that around. And Auburn loves him. They're treating him like a top of the board target. He's not as household a name as some of these other Auburn names that we've been talking about, the Deuce Knights and the Naeem Offords of the world. But inside that Auburn football facility, they love this young man. He's a top of the board guy that they would love to add. They recruited arguably the best receiver class in the country last year. They think he has the talent to come in and push those guys, play alongside those guys. This new standard that they're trying to recruit that position to, they feel like he checks that box. Also, look, I know Auburn lost their game today, but Georgia Tech went up to New York today and lost to Syracuse as well. So look, we'll see. I think Auburn's in the middle of this recruitment. Obviously he visited, and what I say a lot, we'll see what happens.
So we talked a lot about Auburn all week in terms of not just you. I had Philip Dukes on. He felt like Auburn's going to land the number one class in America. But, at some point, I know you said that the loss against Cal, they're still really trending. But at some point, Steve, do wins matter? Like if they're going to take the number one class, do they have to win football games?
I think they need to continue to show that they're competitive. We talked about this on Whip Around on Thursday. They just need to show that this program is on this right trajectory. And they did that in the Iron Bowl last year. They didn't win, but they gave Alabama hell, and Alabama needed to pull something right out of their ass to win that ball game. They're right there. They just need to keep playing like that. Be an exciting football team, be fun to watch, be an engaging coaching staff, because again, this roster isn't where they want it right now, but they're competing. They didn't win today, but 4 turnovers, 4 interceptions. Salute to Cal. They made plays, but the 4 turnovers were a backbreaker today. But be in these ball games, keep playing hard, have a good culture where the players on the team love being in the program. I think that Auburn has all those things going for them right now, so they can push for the number one class. But my vote's still with Georgia. I still think Georgia's going to finish with the number one class right now.
All right, Steve. Let's talk to Auburn fans right now. Let us know. Do you think that winning matters? If Auburn's going to pull the number one class in America, do wins matter on the recruiting trail or not? Let us know. Comment section below. All right. Let's bring back in the great Hayes Fawcett. Hayes, we're going to wrap up the show, but I had a couple. I just wanted to ask you, what does it feel like when you are sitting on a story like that Myron Charles flip, like heading into the weekend? When you hit tweet, it's going to cause a ton of chaos. How does that feel?
Man, it feels pretty cool, But on the other hand, there's also been a lot of instances where I've been told that a certain, commitment or flip is going to happen a certain day and ends up not happening. And I'm like sitting all day waiting to post it. And I'll get informed 5 minutes before it's scheduled to go out that it's no longer happening. And on the other hand, that can be a very, I guess, kind of a deflating feeling.
Yeah. Does it kind of lock you up? Are you like a doctor on call?
Yeah, sometimes I am, especially whenever I know like what time it's coming. I'll make sure I'm available by my phone to, get the news out, and yeah, pretty cool.
Steve? Got a
Yeah, I mean,
question for
I
Hayes?
think that just speaks towards, sometimes these fans think that these decisions are so cut and dry and black and white. And like you think of flips coming. I've written several stories that I thought were going to go to publish that didn't go to publish. And then that story actually never ran. Like the kid ended up never going to that school that he said he was going to go to, or his family said he was going to go to. It just evaporated all the way, and a young man ended up playing his college football elsewhere. So that's the fascinating part about recruiting. These decisions are super hard for these kids. I mean, these college coaches didn't get these jobs by accident. Become the head football coach at Georgia or Tennessee or Auburn without some very alpha-like personality and a lot of confidence in yourself that is contagious when prospects and their families get on campus and get around you. And so, look, we've covered thousands of recruitments. We've written about thousands of recruitments. Hayes has gotten into the thousands on the edits that he's done. But for a lot of these kids, it's their first time going through it, and it's challenging to navigate these waters. And you think about all the major decisions that you've made in your life without someone trying to convince you to make the decision. Now you got these very successful people telling you why their place is the best. Minds change all the time. And then you add in the NIL component, all these other factors, things change just when you think you're ready to make a decision. Then you're like, I might need some more time. That could be what's happening with Andrew Babalola a little bit, right? Because I feel like I've talked to people that have said that the 5-star offensive tackle has a good idea what he wants to do. The young man hasn't been able to commit yet. He played his first high school football game, got a big win on Friday night. He's still uncommitted. Now he could commit in an hour. Maybe Hayes is posting an edit in an hour, but I'm just saying, like, he obviously likes his finalists a whole lot and has had trouble getting it down to one.
Yeah. All right, let's talk a little bit more on this Nebraska-Colorado game and where these two teams go from here. I mean, you have Nebraska, who had a lot to prove. You had Colorado, who also had a lot to prove. And there you got two different styles on the recruiting trail. So first, Steve, to you, I mean, where do you think Nebraska goes with this one?
Well, I think they try and build on it, right? And a lot of these targets that they had at the game today are guys that have been to campus multiple times. They kind of started to hone in on some areas that have a chance to be fruitful for them. Texas, a lot of prospects from Texas, the Dakotas, certainly the in-state guys. Getting these guys back to campus for more games, continuing to build those relationships. But again, more than anything, this is a place that's had 7 straight losing seasons. Changing that narrative on the field could help them land a couple more recruitments that they wouldn't get in the past, and those add up. So if you're winning 2 to 3 recruiting battles you weren't going to win because you were losing, you do that 4 years in a row, that's 12 good players that you weren't going to get if you weren't playing well over the course of 4 years.
Hayes, you got any Nebraska edits in the chamber that we need to know about?
I do not as of right now.
Okay.
Talking to some of these kids tonight, I think Hayes could end up being busy. We're getting some insight from this Steven Walker. He's the latest to check in, a 4-star running back from Missouri that Nebraska is very high on. And he said being inside Memorial Stadium was a great experience. The fans and atmosphere was electric and exciting. I'd say their culture, coaches, and the fact they are winning again excites me most. So he's another guy that Nebraska has at the top of the board that had a fantastic experience tonight. I had a fantastic experience having Hayes in here with us. Hayes, you should do it with us again next weekend.
Hey, I'd love to, man. It's been an honor making my debut on the On3 YouTube channel, and I'm looking forward to hopefully coming on for more.
Yeah, we're definitely going to work Hayes in every single week. We're going to get him, this was just like you said, this was his debut. I know it's only week 2 of the season, but we got a lot more to go. We're going to work Hayes in every week. Me and Steve, we're going to be here. We're eventually going to get some recruits on this show. We're just working it all out right now. We're having fun, Steve. I wanted to ask you one question about Colorado, though. We know that they don't really put a huge focus on high school recruiting, but they are focused on a quarterback named Julian Lewis. What is what is your outlook, let's just say, between Julian Lewis and Colorado? We haven't heard a lot about the Buffaloes and Julian Lewis really since maybe June. Do you think that it's going to heat back up before signing day, or is he kind of shutting it down and just going to ride with USC all the way to signing day?
Well, my intel favors USC for Julian Lewis.
Right.
But Indiana went out and scored 77 points, a program record going back to 1901. They scored 77 points on Friday night. And why I bring up Indiana is because they're trying to get them to come back for a third time for the Maryland or Michigan game. So, Indiana's still hanging in there. Again, my intel favors him sticking with USC. And then he did Shedeur Sanders' podcast. So obviously there's things about Colorado he likes. Certainly the quarterback for Colorado right now is one of the highest paid NIL athletes in sports right now. So that's attractive. But I still favor USC based on all the conversations that I've had regarding Julian Lewis. And then Colorado's approach, you and I have talked about it a little bit in the past. Their recipe has been he gets the job, he comes in with his sons, and he wants to win now right away with his kid under center. I don't blame him for that. But he could have crushed the end of that recruiting cycle on the high school ranks, brought in a fantastic recruiting class last year from the high school ranks. So now you're injecting your program with probably roughly 35 high school players would be what I would say that would add up to. And then he'd probably be doing a nice job on the trail in this class if that's how he chose to use his energy. And then you start to see the young players come together. He would still hit on some key portal guys. I still think that's the recipe. And I'm not being proved wrong right now by the way they're playing on the field, by that thought process.
Some of the high school recruits that they have recruited have really made an impact. I saw Cam Michael playing a lot in week one last year.
Braylon Miller
that transferred out. Dylan Edwards made a huge impact, and he was a big flip from Notre Dame to Colorado at the last minute. So you could kind of see where that could head. I fully believe Coach Prime could go recruit high school players that could have an immediate impact, a lot like the transfer portal. Now we'll see how this goes. We'll see what happens. We know that they need a high school quarterback, though, so that's why I had the Julian Lewis question.
They need two of them. I mean, in my opinion, they need two and a portal guy. Even if you got Julian Lewis,
true. There's no guarantees there that he can.
Exactly right. So, I think the way, look, they still got 10 more games to play too, just like everybody else. But I'm just not a believer in year out building your roster not through the grassroots of high school recruiting and then supplementing it with the portal and with how charismatic he is. And look, there is a lot of people out there that just flat out are rooting against him, but there's a lot of people out there that are flat out rooting for him too. And he is very charismatic. And if he went into any high school, it would go nuts. And if he went into living rooms and sat one-on-one, not even in a high school, like if he was just in an intimate conversation with parents and a prospect about coming to play for Colorado and his coaching staff that has a lot of NFL experience, I think that they would win a lot of recruiting battles on the trail, and they would have a lot of young talent in that program, and it would be building it up that way. That wasn't the route they've gone. They've gone portal.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see what that means for them over the course of the rest of the season, but they don't have a lot of depth. And, look, to go win on the road at night is hard for any program. So losing to Nebraska on the road at night is not the worst thing that could happen to any program. We'll see how they bounce back. But I just think that they left 35 players out there. And to your point, a lot of the freshmen that they did bring in are impact guys. And I think they probably could have went out and got more impact guys if that was the focal point.
And they're making plays, but the Nebraska Cornhuskers, they made more plays. It could have been a bigger win, but Nebraska, They do what they got to do. It's 28-10, and that is it. You guys, we'll be back next Saturday. Make sure you guys are subscribed to the On3 Recruits channel.